Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Bernanke, for being here today. Really want to thank you for your comments earlier about what Congress should be focused on, and that's the long-term liabilities to our country. I do believe that if we would address those issues, the trajectory of our economy would change, and instead of being focused on such a near-term rhetoric and the effects to the economy by short-term policies. So I appreciate what you mentioned earlier. I want to talk a little bit about employment. For the entire U.S. Workforce, employers have added far more part-time employees in 2013, averaging 93,000 a month, seasonally adjusted, than full-time workers, which have averaged 22,000. Last year, the reverse was true, with employers adding 31,000 part-time workers monthly, compared with 171,000 full-time ones. Earlier in June, I, along with other colleagues from Indiana, wrote HHS Secretary Kathleen Sebelius and Treasury Secretary Jack Lew to find out whether or not they had forecasted the impact of the Affordable Care Act on part-time workers who are currently just above the 30-hour threshold. Does this shift of a lot of workers, many workers, from the full-time category to part-time status at all affect your statutory mandate to reach full employment?
I think it does. As I mentioned in my testimony, there are a number of problems with the labor market. Unemployment is one problem, but long-term unemployment and underemployment, and by underemployment I mean people either who are working fewer hours than they would like or possibly are working at jobs well below their skill level, is also indicative of a weak labor market, and a stronger economy will help, I think, on all those dimensions. So yes, that's part of our concern. And as we look at, unemployment rate and try to determine what it means for the labor market, we look at these other indicators as well.
You mentioned earlier that taxes at the beginning of the year were affecting the economy. You mentioned something else I can't recall.
Well, there were spending cuts from before, and then there was tax increases, and then sequestration.
That's right. That's right. Sequestration and the tax increases. Do you believe that the Affordable Care Act is dragging the economy or slowing the economy down at all with the transition that we're currently going through and the effort of implementation?
It's very hard to make any judgment. You asked about the part-time. I mean, one thing that we hear, in the commentary we get at the FOMC, is that some employers are hiring part-time in order to avoid the mandate there. So we have heard that. But on the other hand, a couple of observations. One is that the very high level of part-time employment has been around since the beginning of the recovery, and we don't fully understand it. Secondly, those data come from the household survey, and they're a little bit inconsistent with some of the data from the firm survey, which suggests that work weeks haven't really declined very much. So I would say at this point that we're withholding judgment on that question.
Do you think that a delay in the mandates would be appropriate?
It has to. This is beyond my pay grade. This would depend on questions of how well and how much time is needed to fully implement the bill.
Okay, thank you. With about a minute left, I'd like to touch on some of the global economic concerns and other countries beginning a trend of currency devaluation and the fear of currency wars that might follow. Could you comment on that at all?
Well, as I mentioned in an earlier answer, the international community makes a distinction between attempts to manipulate an individual exchange rate in order to gain unfair advantage in export markets versus using monetary or fiscal to achieve domestic objectives that may have the side effect of weakening the currency. So this was the example of Japan. Japan has taken policy actions that have weakened the yen, but that wasn't the focus of those actions. Their actions were intended to break the deflation which they faced for the last 15 years or so, to get their economy growing more quickly and to get back to a 2% or so inflation objective. If they are successful, there may be some exchange rate effects, as the earlier question raised, but there'll also be the benefit that a stronger Japanese economy and a stronger Asian economy will increase world growth and be a benefit to the U.S. as well. So those are the distinction between those different types of management of the currency.
Okay, thank you.
Time of the